Imagine standing in the middle of a flat, sun-scorched savanna in northern Australia, or the heart of sub-Saharan Africa. The air is thick, the heat is relentless, and the ground beneath your feet feels solid, permanent, almost ancient. Then you look up. Rising before you is a tower of hardened earth. Taller than you, taller than your car, possibly taller than the roof of your house. It has no doors, no windows, no visible entrance. It simply stands there, jagged and cathedral-like, rising from the earth as though it has always been part of the landscape, and in many ways it has. What you are looking at was not built by humans. It was not carved by geological forces over millions of years. It was constructed, grain by grain, by insects no bigger than a grain of rice. Insects that are blind, insects that have no architect, no foreman, no blueprint, and yet what they built is, by every measure of engineering and biology, one of the most complex structures ever created by any living organism on Earth. That includes us. This is the Termite Mound, and once you understand what it truly is, you will never look at the ground beneath your feet the same way again. Let's start with the numbers, because the numbers alone should be enough to make you pause. A mature termite mound can stand between 2 and 9 meters tall. That's up to 30 feet of solid self-constructed architecture. Some species, like Macrotermes in Australia, build mounds that are wider than they are tall, stretching up to 30 meters in diameter at the base. The cathedral termite mounds of the Northern Territory are so massive that early European settlers used them as navigational landmarks, the same way sailors use lighthouses. Inside a single mound, the colony that built it can number between 1 million and 5 million individuals. In some African species of Macrotermes, researchers have counted populations exceeding 10 million termites inside a single structure. 10 million. In a single nest. In a structure built with no machines, no cranes, no mortar, no plans. Just bodies, saliva, soil particles, and what scientists are still trying to fully understand is one of the most fascinating forms of collective intelligence in the natural world. But the size is only the beginning. The size is the thing you can see. What you cannot see is what makes the termite mound one of the most extraordinary feats of biological engineering ever documented by science. Here is the question that changed how researchers think about termites. How does a mound maintain a near-constant internal temperature of around 30 degrees Celsius, even as the outside temperature swings from near freezing at night to scorching heat above 40 degrees Celsius during the day? For decades, scientists assumed the answer was simply the thickness of the mound walls, that all that dense, packed earth acted as a kind of insulating buffer. But when researchers began drilling sensors into mounds in the 1990s and 2000s, the data they found told a completely different story. The mounds were not just passively resisting temperature change, they were actively managing it. They were, in a very real sense, breathing. The interior of a termite mound is a labyrinth. There are broad central chimneys, narrow side tunnels, thin-walled outer passages, and a vast underground network that can extend several meters below the surface. Air moves through this network in patterns that researchers now describe as thermally driven ventilation. During the day, hot air rises through the central core of the mound and is diverted outward toward the thinner outer walls, where it cools and descends. At night, the cycle reverses. Carbon dioxide produced by millions of termites, and by the fungal gardens some species cultivate inside the mound, creates convection currents that keep air circulating even when temperature differentials are minimal. The result is a passive climate control system of extraordinary precision. A 2019 study published in the journal Science Advances proposed that this ventilation is not simply a byproduct of the mound's architecture. It is the mound's primary function. The termites are not building a home. They are building a lung. Think about that for a moment. Blind insects, each weighing less than a paperclip, collectively engineering a ventilation system that rival architects would struggle to replicate without computer-aided design. And they do it using nothing but instinct, chemical signals, and a process that scientists call stigmergy, a form of indirect coordination where each individual responds to the local environment, not to any central command. And this brings us to something even more disturbing. There is no leader in a termite colony. There is a queen, yes, but she is not issuing commands. She is a biological machine, sealed in her royal chamber deep within the mound, laying up to 30,000 eggs per day, producing chemical signals that help regulate the colony's hormonal state. But she does not decide what gets built. She does not direct traffic. The architecture of the mound, its tunnels, its chambers, its ventilation shafts, its fungal gardens, emerges entirely from the collective behavior of workers following simple local rules. Worker A senses carbon dioxide levels are rising. Worker A deposits a pellet of soil in a specific spot. Worker B, detecting the chemical signal left by Worker A's pellet, deposits another pellet nearby. Over time, a pillar forms, then an arch, then a tunnel, then a chamber, then a ventilation shaft connecting that chamber to the outer wall. No individual termite ever sees the whole structure. No individual termite ever has a plan. And yet the plan emerges. This process, emergence through stigmergy, is now one of the most actively studied concepts in computer science, robotics, and artificial intelligence. Engineers designing swarm robots and self-organizing systems have turned to termite colonies as their primary model. DARPA, the U.S. military research agency, funded a project in the 2010s exploring how autonomous robots could build structures using termite-inspired algorithms. The research produced robots that could stack bricks into complex shapes without any centralized control, guided only by sensors and local rules. The termites got there 400 million years earlier. If you are finding this fascinating, this is exactly the kind of content we put out every week. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time. Hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share this with someone who thinks insects are boring. We are about to prove them very wrong. Because here is where the story shifts from impressive to genuinely unsettling. Some termite species do not just build ventilated towers, some of them farm. Deep inside the mounds of Macrotermes termites across Africa and Southeast Asia, workers cultivate gardens of a specialized fungus called termitomyces. These are not wild fungal infestations. They are managed agricultural operations. Workers chew plant material collected from the surrounding landscape, grass, wood, dead leaves, and deposit it in dedicated fungal chambers. The fungus grows on this substrate, breaking down complex plant fibers that the termites themselves cannot digest. The termites then eat the fungus, extracting nutrients that would otherwise be chemically inaccessible. The fungus, in return, receives a perfectly controlled environment, the right temperature, the right humidity, the right airflow, all maintained by the mound's ventilation architecture. This is a mutualistic agricultural relationship that has been running unbroken for approximately 30 million years. To put that in context, modern human agriculture is approximately 10,000 years old. Termite agriculture is 3,000 times older, and the fungal species involved have co-evolved so completely with their termite hosts that termitomyces cannot survive or reproduce outside of a termite mound. The relationship is, biologically speaking, permanent. Neither organism can now exist without the other. They have fused into something that biologists hesitate to call two separate species at all. The scale of what termites actually do to an ecosystem is something that most people have never considered. And when you look at the data, the effect is enormous. In the savannas of Africa, termite mounds are not evenly distributed. They cluster in patterns that ecologists call fairy circles and termite hotspots, creating a mosaic landscape where mound-influenced soil is chemically and structurally different from surrounding soil. The mounds aerate the earth. They increase soil porosity. They pull minerals from deep underground and deposit them near the surface. In a 2014 study published in Science, researchers demonstrated that in dry African savannas, areas with termite mounds retain significantly more plant biomass during drought years than equivalent areas without mounds. The mounds, it turns out, act as moisture reservoirs and nutrient pumps. They buffer the ecosystem against drought stress. They make the land around them more resilient. Remove the termites and the savanna becomes more vulnerable to desertification. In the Amazon basin, researchers have recently mapped a staggering network of approximately 200 million termite mounds spread across a region the size of Great Britain. These mounds, built by a single species called Termite Mound, are estimated to have been constructed over a period of roughly 4,000 years, and represent, by volume of material moved, one of the largest biological engineering projects ever documented. The total volume of soil excavated to build these mounds is comparable to the amount of earth moved to construct the Great Wall of China, except the Great Wall took human civilization with iron tools and slave labor to build. The termites did it without eyes, without plans, without leaders, and without stopping. Now zoom out even further, and the picture becomes almost incomprehensible. It is estimated that termites process between 50 and 100% of all dead plant matter in tropical ecosystems. In the African savanna, They may decompose more organic material than all other decomposers combined, more than bacteria, more than fungi, more than earthworms. They are the invisible engine of tropical nutrient cycling. Without them, dead plant material would accumulate, soils would impoverish. Carbon locked in dead wood and grass would have no efficient pathway back into the ecosystem. The feedback loops that keep tropical ecosystems productive would slow, and possibly collapse. This is not speculation. This is documented ecological science, supported by decades of field research. When experimental plots in African savannas are cleared of termites, plant decomposition rates drop measurably within months. Soil compaction increases. Nutrient availability declines. The land begins to subtly but demonstrably degrade. The termites were holding it together, and most of the time, nobody noticed. That is perhaps the most unsettling part of all. And then there is the question of time. Individual termite workers live for only a few months. The queen of a large Macrotermes colony may live for 20 or 30 years, which makes her one of the longest-lived insects known to science. But the mound itself can persist for far longer than any individual in it. There are Macrotermes mounds in Africa that researchers believe have been continuously inhabited for over 2,000 years. The colony that lives inside it today is not descended in a direct line from the founding colony. The genetic lineage has shifted, queens have been replaced, workers have lived and died across hundreds of generations. But the mound endures, the architecture persists. The ventilation system, refined over centuries of incremental modification, continues to function. The mound is not a home that its builders will ever truly finish. It is a living structure, modified in real time by inhabitants who have no concept of what they are maintaining, and yet maintain it perfectly. If this video is making you see the world a little differently, that means it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video with someone who needs to be genuinely amazed today. Every like helps us keep making content like this, and trust us, we have a lot more where this came from. There is one final thought to leave you with. Right now as you watch this, somewhere in the tropics, in Africa, in Australia, in South America, in Southeast Asia, millions of blind mute gram-weight insects are moving through a structure they built without understanding. They are depositing particles of soil in precise locations guided by chemical gradients they sense but cannot name. They are maintaining a climate control system more elegant than most modern buildings. They are farming a fungus that has been cultivated without interruption since before the first humans walked upright on the African plains. They are decomposing the dead matter of a forest so that the forest can continue to live. They are doing all of this simultaneously, collectively and continuously, with no awareness that any of it is happening at all, and they have been doing it for 400 million years. The termite mound is not just a pile of dirt, it is one of the most sophisticated structures on Earth. It is an ecological engine, it is a ventilation system, a farm, a fortress and a time capsule all at once. It is the product of a kind of intelligence that is not located in any single brain, or any single body, but distributed across millions of tiny lives operating in near-perfect coordination. And it rises out of the ground in the middle of a savanna that most people drive past without a second glance. The next time you see a mound of earth, anywhere in any landscape, look at it again. Something extraordinary is almost certainly happening inside.